Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to HANA's third quarter review. So, first slide gives you our operating profits, just under 700 million, down 19% from the year and down 11% from the previous quarter. Sales in baht terms were down 13% and operating profits were down 19% year on year. Our margins were flat and we generated about 12% less EBITDA, 1.12 billion. Net profit after tax, however, increased 76% from 417 to 734 as we benefited from a change in our hedging policy. Net cash and short-term investments were down 7% to 3.55 billion. Quarter on quarter, sales were down 5% and operating profits down 11%. Again, margins were flat at 11% and the rest is the same. So let's move on to the individual operations, starting with our EMS business in Hana Micro Lamphun. Quarter on quarter, revenues were down 3%, but up 8% on the year. Our automotive business still remains very strong, and we saw improvements in medical business as well, and industrial and commercial were also quite stable. The RFID business and computer, however, were a little bit weaker, and we continue to see improvements on the industrial side of our business. The medical side has seen strong growth both in our hearing aid business, and we have a new business relating to checking your heart performance, arterial fibrillation, and this will drive our growth in the medical business for the next 6 months or so. Telecom, unfortunately, still remains weak, but I think there are going to be some changes coming forward. And if we look ahead a little bit in the fourth quarter, auto still remain fairly strong, and industrials and medical are still okay, but RF remains soft. We will continue to focus on productivity. We have a minimum wage coming soon, and everybody has to improve our operations in order to pay for the additional cost of increased wages, which the government will announce in due course. The automotive, just looking for the third quarter, the global worldwide sales of cars still remain pretty strong, which is surprising given that interest rates are very high. I think one of the surprising things that is we now understand is that the increase in interest rates in America has not stopped the US consumer. And the US economy has performed much better than expected since the beginning of the year. But the Chinese economy, which was expected to perform much better, hasn't done. And I think the main issue is obviously because of the property issue in China. Moving on to our EMS business in Jiaxing, they are suffering a bit more now. Sales were down nearly 10% on the quarter and 28% on the year. And the main reason for that was because our access control business, which was very strong in the previous year after the COVID ends, I think produced too much, and we're seeing a correction. This is access control. These are products that go into hotel doors, offices, schools, public buildings, that sort of thing. The hearing aid business actually was quite strong for us. And of course, up until recently, the renminbi has been quite weak, which helped our margins. But still, when you have a drop in sales, it's difficult to, improve your overall profitability under that circumstance. And the outlook in the fourth quarter, I think, is remain similar or maybe slightly lower. PC business in the third quarter also continues to drop after the COVID boost, down % year on year, according to Gartner's. But there is some optimism that PCs will now start to get a boost driven by AI. A lot of PC companies are gearing up to launch new desktops and laptops with higher performing computing capability, computing power, to be able to cope with the needs as we start to enjoy the benefits of artificial intelligence. So this could be something that the PC industry can benefit from over the next 2 to 3 years. We'll see how that comes. Moving on to Ayutthaya. This is the difficult area at the moment because the semiconductor OSAT business is down substantially. So quarter on quarter, we were down 10% and 26% on the year. The main reason for this is because China has not grown as we expected, as I mentioned earlier. And our loadings are at a historically very low level of around 52%. Now, normally, if you're loading at 52% of your installed capacity, you will be losing money. But I'm pleased to say that through strong focus on cost control, managing the high utility costs, and of course, with some support from the favorable exchange rate, Ayutthaya has remained profitable in the third quarter. So a great job with the team, but it's quite challenging when you have only around 50% of output from your installed capacity. We think the inventory levels are starting to get quite low now, and we actually start to see some, I can say, green shoots, some interest from some of our customers who are talking about some increases in the first quarter. But I think the fourth quarter will still remain fairly weak, and it'll be quite challenging for us to continue under this situation, because the Thai baht probably will be a bit stronger in the fourth quarter compared to the third quarter, and the capacity utilization will be probably something similar or maybe slightly lower. Moving on to the IC business in Jiaxing, also the same situation, very low. Up until recently, this operation was supported quite nicely by the EV modules that we're making for a certain high-end EV car manufacturer. But you may know that the situation in the EV car growth is now becoming a little bit different. What's happening is that the high-end EV cars are struggling to be sold. I would say these were the first adopters, but the low-end cars are shooting up very nicely. So the EV car story is still continuing to do very well. It's just that different type of cars are performing better than others. So the high-end cars are now suffering. The low-end cars are going up quite nicely. And unfortunately, our EV module exposure was to the high-end manufacturer. So they are struggling with excess inventory, and they drop their orders to us. So unfortunately, that really impacted our Jiaxing business. The other opportunity is the RFID business, which is doing quite well, but not as well as we had hoped, because we're still waiting for certain certifications from an American body called Auburn, which has been delayed. But production has started, and we are optimistic this will start to deliver as we hoped in the early part of next year. We saw good improvement in our LED projector modules. We have quite a big business in LEDs in China, so that was one bright spot. But overall, the outlook for the fourth quarter still remains weak, although we do have, and I will talk about later, some good progress on our HANA power packages, which will be, we hope, supporting our growth next year. So just a chart to show you how the semiconductor industry is performing during this year. If you look at the top, you can see in the first quarter, the year-on-year semiconductor sales, this is the global sales, that went down 21%. In the second quarter, down 17%, and in the third quarter, down 4.5%. So what that's telling you is that the rate of the drop is slowing quite quickly. And if we look specifically on a month basis, it's actually up nearly 2%. So that kind of movement is indicating that the cycle is beginning to turn. The important thing we need to understand is, as it turns, does it go up quickly or does it go up slowly? And my personal view is it's going to take another 2 quarters for the speed to pick up, because there's still a lot of uncertainty with the US interest rates, although currently at the moment, the view is that the Federal Reserve will not increase further, but inflation is an unpredictable sort of index. So I don't think we can be too sure about inflation has already got down. So high interest rates will still have an impact over consumers. The smartphone business, which is a big part of HANA's activity, was also down, but slightly now because that's been down for a long time. So again, we see the rate of the decline slowing down. And actually, we already start seeing some of our big customers for the mobile phone business talking about increasing their orders in the first quarter of next year. So whilst this business has been down for at least the past 2 to 2.5 years, we are a little bit more optimistic that the bottom of the cycle for the smartphone business has been reached. I don't think it's going to shoot up particularly because it's a mature business. Everyone's got 1 or 2 phones, but the rate of going down is definitely slowing down or even stopping. We might see some slight improvement. And remember, this is a $500 billion industry. So even though it's not growing very much, it's a very important industry for many, many companies, including HANA. So a couple of headlines showing that optimism grows as many analysts believe that the smartphone industry is close to the bottom now. So this is a chart showing our loading levels. You can see that they started to pick up in the third quarter, but unfortunately, as China started to slow down, it dropped down again. Our US company has performed quite well in Ohio, up 40% of the quarter and 5% on the year. This was driven by our tire tag business, which is a strong recovery after COVID. The inlay business, as I mentioned earlier, is growing, but not as fast as we thought. But we think that's going to start proving early next year. And we have bought a new building to cope with the expansion. And at the moment, we're running both the old building and the new building. So that's impacting our profitability. But that will be over by the end of the first quarter next year. And the outlook is actually quite positive, particularly because we see the tire tag business growing much faster than we expected. Cambodia is now doing quite well. Quarter on quarter sales up 1%, 95% of the year. Now, partly that was because of the local revenue making us change from consignment to turnkey. But we have real growth. And through productivity enhancement and the closer cooperation with Lamphun, we've reduced the headcount and improved productivity, and we start making a profitable situation going forward. So that's good news. Finally, after a number of years, we can turn the corner and be profitable. Here's a chart giving you an idea of the end products. You can see telecom down from 26 to 22, autos just down slightly, industrials up, optos just a little bit down, RFID up, consumer up, computer down, and medical up quite a lot, but from a low base. The US dollar is starting to weaken as everyone is projecting the Federal Reserve will not increase rates again, but they've been surprised in the past, so be careful. I think now if the Fed doesn't increase rates, the focus will be on how the new Thai government will manage Thai growth. And you can see the Thai baht trading between low 35s to mid 35s at the moment. HANA's EBITDA was still quite reasonable at 1.1 billion, down 157 million from the last year. Our capex reduced about 133, but we'll be spending a lot more soon as we increase our capacity in Korea. And net cash was down slightly at 200 million baht. Now I'll move on to the silicon carbide business. PMS, unfortunately, had a tough time in the third quarter, down 32% on the quarter and 6% on the year. And the main reason for that is the weak Chinese economy and our current dependency on our silicon devices, which currently makes up 80% of the output. Our silicon carbide, the ramp up is starting to happen now. So this will happen in the fourth quarter and continue in the first and second and third quarter next year. But in the third quarter this year, because of the weak Chinese economy and our reliance still on silicon, the business dropped for us. Now, the good news is that new equipment has already started to come in and is being installed. So this will increase our silicon carbide output, which will start in the fourth quarter. So we're projecting an improvement in revenues in the fourth quarter over the third and second quarter as well. And in the first half of next year, we have a lot of equipment coming in, which was ordered about 18 months ago, and it's 12 to 18 months ago. This is coming in and will be set up. So during the first half of next year, we will see a big increase in our silicon carbide capacity. And we project by the end of next year, the ratio between silicon and silicon carbide will be 50-50%. Currently, it's 80-20%. Okay. Because of the weakness in silicon, unfortunately, the EBITDA break-even has been pushed out to the second half of next year. But let's hope that the economy starts to recover well before that time. A couple of slides on HANA's new packaging line, which is being put into China. This is the HANA EV package called the HE pack. This is a patented package, and it's receiving a lot of interest from big multinational companies. So we're quite optimistic that this can help us grow, and we hope to see some results from this investment over the past few years coming in the second half of next year. And this product, the idea with this product, it goes into the EV traction inverter into the EV car, will improve the yield loss that is currently being experienced in the competition's package. Our different design will improve the yield loss and reduce the cost of throwing away too much silicon carbide when you produce these. So we're very optimistic about this new package. And because it's patented, it's exclusive to HANA. We have also other packages, some of which are also patented, all focusing on the EV car. And this will be introduced over the course of next year. But we've been spending 2 years now, so we're nearly there, and it's receiving a lot of interest from companies. So I'm very optimistic about this new business, which can drive our sales in the second half of next year. Silicon carbide is still, however, expected to grow. It is still growing at it's the fastest growing semiconductor sort of segment at around 25 to 26%, according to McKinsey. This was just recent analysis in October. And China is still the largest consumer, because China is the world's biggest producer of EV cars, certainly the low-end cars. And you can see them in Thailand, so many new cars coming into Thailand. And I think over the course of the next few years, we will see more and more low-end, when I say low-end, I mean lower cost EV cars coming through. And these will be quite good quality with longer mileage range as well. So the increase in the EV will come at the lower cost level. The high cost level, which was the early adopter, is going to struggle because people don't have $100,000 plus to spend. And in the third quarter, just, in terms of unit sales, EV sales jumped 50% year on year in the third quarter, just to confirm what I'm telling you. So demand for silicon carbide still remains very strong. So the growth of EV will be driven by lower cost models, not the higher cost models. And those are controlled now by the Chinese EV producers and Tesla. Okay. And we need to focus on supporting that development. The other area is the EV charging infrastructure, because EV charging still is behind the growth rates of the EV car. So the infrastructure needs to expand so people feel more confident buying an EV car. They can charge the car up. This is Yole. Yole is one of the big companies that analyze silicon carbide. And this is a recent report showing for them even higher growth rate than McKinsey at 31%. So in summary, the third quarter, we saw the OSAT business dropping after a pickup in the second quarter because of the Chinese economy weakness. But we supported it well through headcount reduction, and we were helped by a weaker Thai baht. Cambodia was profitable, but unfortunately, we did have higher losses for PMS due to the weak China situation. And this was driven by the weakness, of course, in the OSAT business, but our EMS business supported the losses out of PMS very well. Our automotive business remained strong. Commercial and industrial was strong. RFID was strong, but not as strong as we hoped, but still was positive. And the weak China demand for PMS was clearly a problem in the third quarter, but we expect that to improve in the fourth quarter going forward. So looking ahead, China still will dominate global growth. Up until now, China has been the engine of the global economic growth. For those of you who look at the Chinese economy, just a few days ago, the Chinese government started to talk about supporting the real estate industry, and you saw big jumps in bonds and stocks relating to some of the big Chinese companies. If the Chinese government starts paying attention to this, we can be a bit more positive about how the Chinese economy will perform next year. We think IC inventories are pretty low. So I think the bottom is getting close, and it will probably take till the second quarter to start seeing a significant increase. Our EMS business still remains strong, and automotive at the moment from our customers still remains quite positive. Tire tags and inlays will also support our growth. We think mobile business will start to improve in the first quarter, and as I mentioned earlier, we're already seeing some indication of increased demand from our customers. And finally, from Korea PMS, we do see some green shoots coming through, and when our new equipment comes in, this will support our growth in 2024. So with that, let me open the floor for any questions you may have, which you can type in Thai or call in. We have Kuntapa Wang here will translate for me. Thank you.
ส่งคำถามได้เลยนะคะเป็นภาษาไทยก็ได้นะคะ มีคำถามไหมคะ
Okay, if no questions at the moment, maybe question? No. Question? No question. Okay. So whilst I'm waiting for anyone to ask any questions, maybe I can talk a little bit more about our silicon carbide business, okay? Because clearly this is very important for HANA. Okay, we have a question now. Okay, so high interest rates, how would that impact the capital expenditure going forward? Well, as you know, HANA completed the private placement about a month ago or so. So we have sufficient funding to support our capital expenditure needs. Of course, we do and have already taken on some term loans. But you're absolutely right. Interest rates now are at a very high level. We have to pay interest of around 7.5%. So we will try to minimize our borrowing. And of course, we will use our own EBITDA funds generated plus the private placement funds, which was about 4.5 billion that came in about a month ago. So in summary, it's not going to affect our capex. We have enough money to invest in whatever we think is the right thing to invest in. Okay, whilst we're waiting for any other question? Okay.
โอเคนะคะคำถามที่ถามเข้ามานะคะว่าทางบริษัทคิดว่าการฟื้นตัวของอุตสาหกรรมอิเล็กทรอนิกส์จะเป็น V-shape หรือ U-shape นะคะขออนุญาตแปลให้คุณริชาร์ดนิดนึงนะคะ The question is they're asking the growth will be V-shape or U-shape.
My view is U-shape, to be honest. Whilst inventory levels, I think in general are very low, there's still concerns from many customers about the impact of high interest rates on the final consumer. So I think everyone is being quite cautious, and I think we are looking more U-shaped recovery than V-shaped recovery.
ค่ะคำตอบนะคะคุณริชาร์ดคิดว่าการเติบโตของอุตสาหกรรมอิเล็กทรอนิกส์น่าจะเป็น U-shape มากกว่าเพราะว่าเนื่องจากความกังวลเกี่ยวกับดอกเบี้ยที่สูงนะคะคำถามต่อไปนะคะเป้าหมายการเติบโตของบริษัทจะเป็นเท่าไหร่ในปีหน้านะคะ Next year growth what is the outlook or expectation?
Well, obviously I am expecting to see a better performance from our silicon carbide business in Korea. So of course from a low base we do expect to see decent growth going forward, at least double-digit growth for sure. I'm pretty confident of that. For the core business, the more mature business, I do expect to see some recovery in the second half of next year as we talk about the U or V shape, right? This is more U shape. A lot, I think, depends on how the Chinese economy hopefully can start to improve after very difficult, this year, 2023, very difficult in China. And that a lot of that will depend on what Chinese policy change will be made in order to support the economy. And if you need to look at something, you need to look at the property industry. If the Chinese government starts to support the resumption of Chinese property companies, I think that will have a very positive impact on sentiment in China, and the Chinese consumer will start to spend again. So growth is still very possible, but as a group, I think it's not going to be a high level of growth because of all the things that I mentioned.
ค่ะคำตอบของการเป้าหมายการเติบโตนะคะคุณริชาร์ดคิดว่าการเติบโตในของส่วนที่เป็นธุรกิจซิลิคอนคาร์ไบด์ของเราเนี่ยน่าจะเป็น2เท่านะคะแล้วก็ครึ่งปีหลังเนี่ยจะเป็นการที่อยู่ที่ว่าการฟื้นตัวของเศรษฐกิจจีนนะคะว่าจะเป็นยังไงอยู่ที่นโยบายของจีนแล้วก็ต้องดูธุรกิจอสังหาโดยเฉพาะธุรกิจอสังหาของจีนนะคะว่าจะเป็นยังไงเพราะว่าอันนี้จะเป็นดัชนีชี้วัดที่จะทำให้ผู้บริโภคเนี่ยมีการจับจ่ายใช้สอยนะคะคำถามต่อไปนะคะข้อ5นะคะต้นทุนวัตถุดิบหลักของบริษัทมีอะไรบ้างที่เป็นหลักและสัดส่วนเป็นอย่างไรนะคะขออนุญาตแปลให้คุณริชาร์ดฟังนิดนึงค่ะ Our cost of the materials, the key materials of our business. What's the ratio? What is the key materials and ratio?
Materials. Okay, we have, as you know, we have two types of business. We have our packaging business and our EMS business. The packaging business, the biggest cost is the lead frame and molding compound, gold wire. Okay. For the EMS business, of course, the biggest costs are the chips basically, and many other passive components, and of course PCB as well. Okay. So those are the sort of typical type of materials that we use in our manufacturing.
ค่ะต้นทุนวัตถุดิบหลักๆของเรานะคะถ้าเรามีธุรกิจ2ประเภทนะคะที่เป็น packaging จะเป็น lead frame ลวดทองนะคะแล้วก็ molding compound ส่วนที่เป็น EMS ก็จะเป็นchip electronic แล้วก็เป็น PCB นะคะเป็นหลักข้อ6นะคะ
Okay, so for next year, I think the biggest challenges we have for HANA are executing on setting up the equipment that's coming into our Korean company, PowerMaster. We need to execute well. The machine is coming in, and our team needs to execute on bringing it up and getting it to work as quickly as possible. So that's one big challenge that we have to, hopefully succeed in. The other risks, I think, in general, are overall economic growth. As I mentioned earlier, if China continues to be weak and the American economy starts to weaken finally because of higher interest rates, higher for longer interest rates, then that's going to have an impact on our core business. There's not much I can do about that, but obviously if that starts to happen, we're going to have to look to cut costs somehow. Other issues, of course, like minimum wage and exchange rates, again, challenges for everybody, including HANA. And we try to offset that through productivity, but there's not a lot you can do, in order to mitigate those kind of issues.
นะคะข้อคำถามต่อไปนะคะเป็นการย้ายฐานการผลิตของรถ EV ของจีนนะคะจะส่งผลดีกับบริษัทอย่างไรบ้างนะคะ So the relocation of the EV car of China EV car producing will it give us more benefits?
Yes, I think as you know, China is starting to set up facilities. Thailand is a good example where many big Chinese EV companies have bought land and are planning to assemble. And I think that will be helpful for us as a company that's not necessarily in China. Our location is not that important in respect of where they make the car. But the one thing that is important is that Chinese companies prefer to work with a Korean company because a Korean company is not considered a Western company. And when they come and talk to us, we say, well, not only are we Korean, but our shareholders are Thai. And Thailand is very neutral, right, between China and the West. So they very much like to work with a neutral or a non-Western company if they can. And I think that's one of our big advantages when we compete against the other big Western companies.
โอเคนะคะข้อ7คำตอบนะคะการย้ายฐานการผลิตของ EV จีนเนี่ยมีผลดีกับบริษัทยังไงบริษัทของจีนที่มาทำเขาเรียกอะไรประกอบรถยนต์หรือผลิตรถยนต์ในเมืองไทยเนี่ยไม่ได้ส่งผลโดยตรงกับบริษัทของเรานะคะแต่ว่าผลิตพวกชิปอิเล็กทรอนิกส์ต่างๆที่อยู่ในรถเนี่ยค่ะเนื่องจากบริษัทจีนเนี่ยต้องการทำธุรกิจกับบริษัทที่ไม่ใช่ประเทศตะวันตกนะคะอย่างที่เราทราบกันก็เรามีบริษัทของเราที่เกาหลีแล้วอย่างที่บริษัทของ HANA ที่นี่เองเราก็เป็นบริษัทที่จดทะเบียนเป็นบริษัทไทยนะคะเพราะฉะนั้นอันนี้จะคิดว่าจะเป็นการที่ส่งผลดีนะคะกับธุรกิจของเราในส่วนของด้านนี้นะคะข้อ8นะคะปัจจุบันสินค้าของบริษัทมีสัดส่วนเพื่อนำไปใช้กับอุตสาหกรรมใดบ้างนะคะ Our current products it's in which industry in ratio?
Well, if you I go back to this chart, you can see the end applications. So you can see telecom and autos probably account for nearly 50% of the group's exposure. And then industrial and opto, they're kind of like similar end applications, about 25%. And then RFID 12, and consumer 9, and computer 6, and medical 5. So I think that's quite a nice spread. Of course, you can always be more diverse, but if you compare us with a number of other companies, I think you'll find HANA is actually a lot more diverse than the average.
นะคะถ้าดูจาก presentation ของคุณวิชาร์ดนะคะก็จะเห็นว่าสัดส่วนของสินค้าของเรามีอยู่ในหลายอุตสาหกรรมนะคะทั้งเทเลคอมทั้งautomotive นะคะ industrial opto RFID แล้วก็ consumer แล้วก็ computer แล้วก็ medical ค่ะโอเคนะคะคำถามต่อไปการย้ายโรงงานกลุ่มของsemiconductor เข้ามาใช้ไทยเป็นฐานการผลิตมากขึ้นมีผลกระทบต่อการแข่งขันของ HANA หรือไม่นะคะ so the question is the Wasac Factory for Wasac is now setting up in Thailand. Is it, giving us any impact? Anything?
The OSAT business, the EV companies.
Not OSAT, the semiconductor.
Well, not immediately. I think any new investments coming into Thailand to increase the semiconductor is still takes time. So I don't see any immediate benefit because of that. But I think later on, the more Thailand can attract the development of the semiconductor industry, the better it will be for ourselves and any other local semiconductor companies.
And any competition in that area?
No, we've not seen any new competition coming into Thailand at the moment. Setting up a semiconductor, an OSAT business is a very difficult thing to do. It takes a long time. So we don't see any new competition coming into Thailand at this point in time.
ค่ะตอนนี้คำตอบของข้อนี้นะคะคุณริชันมองว่ากลุ่มของ semiconductor เนี่ยค่ะการเข้ามาตั้งฐานการผลิตเนี่ยน่าจะไม่ใช่เรื่องกังวลเพราะว่าการที่จะตั้งโรงงานอุตสาหกรรมแบบ semiconductor เนี่ยใช้เวลานานแล้วก็ไม่น่าจะมีผลกระทบอะไรกับฮาน่าค่ะมีคำถามเพิ่มอีกไหมคะโอเค
So in terms of proprietary products, we do have some non-power package devices, sensors, which are patented, and they actually they're already existing, but we have won some business from that, which we think is going to start next year. That will go into the mobile phone business. And obviously, as PowerMaster develops its technology roadmap, we will be launching new products. This will be towards the end of next year in silicon carbide, different versions, improving switching speed and increasing power. Basically, it's the same thing, but a sort of higher performance silicon carbide MOSFET. So it's a good question because you probably noticed over the past 5 or 7 years that we are able to announce some new devices which are patented, and that really is one of the important keys in order to keep your margin. If you have something that's patented, you can protect your margin. Otherwise, everybody jumps in very quickly, and then the price goes down.
คำตอบส่วนของข้อนี้นะคะเรื่อง patent นะคะเรื่องสิทธิบัตรคุณริชาร์ดตอบว่าเราปีหน้าเรามีแพลนของที่จะทำสิทธิบัตรจดสิทธิบัตรของproduct ผลิตภัณฑ์ที่จะใส่เข้าไปในโทรศัพท์มือถืออันนึงและอีกอันนึงก็จะเป็น patent ของเรื่องพวก EV นะคะที่เราโรงงานเกาหลีของเรามีสิทธิบัตรพวกนี้อยู่แล้วนะคะแล้วก็กำลังดำเนินการเพิ่มเติมเพิ่ม patent เพิ่มขึ้นนะคะมีคำถามเพิ่มไหมคะมันจะไม่มีคำถามเพิ่ม
So perhaps whilst we're waiting for any other questions, maybe I can just talk a little bit about further about the outlook. I think that's important. As I said, when we look ahead, the key things that we as management look at are how the demand for the products that that our customers produce and we support our customers will perform in the following year. So the first thing you look at is where they are today in terms of their cycle. So the mobile telecom business looks like at the bottom of the cycle. So that's encouraging. I mean, we've been through a difficult time. Second thing is that automotive has actually been strong all the time. So that one is possible that might start to weaken because of high interest rates. Industrial and opto, I think, will start to improve because I think manufacturers, because of the low inventory, will start to want to restock again and buy more equipment. RFID is a growth industry. I think that one will do well. Consumer, will be probably up and down a little bit. Computer possibly may start to pick up if AI starts to have a positive impact. And I think we're quite positive on our medical business. Remember that.
โอเคนะคะOutlookนะคะคุณริชาร์ดบอกว่าถ้าเทียบเป็น product application ที่เรามีผลิต จะพันอยู่ในต่างๆนะคะก็ส่วนของที่เป็นโมบายเนี่ยนะคะโมบายดิสเพลย์ก็ลงต่ำสุดละตอนนี้นะคะแล้วก็คิดว่ามันน่าจะดีขึ้นนะคะตามเทรนด์ชาร์ตถ้าใน presentation ทุกคนทำได้ส่วนของ automotive นะคะก็เป็นธุรกิจที่แข็งแกร่งมาตลอดแล้วก็เราคิดว่ามันน่าจะเริ่มถอยลงนิดนึงนะคะสำหรับ automotive นะคะเพราะว่าดอกเบี้ยนะคะดอกเบี้ยส่วนของindustrial นะคะเราก็มองว่ามันน่าจะเติบโตขึ้นนะคะแล้วก็ส่วนของ RFID เรามองว่ามันเป็นธุรกิจที่คิดว่าเป็นส่วนที่เติบโตได้อย่างดีนะคะที่เรามองเห็นส่วนของ consumer ก็ flat นะคะประมาณเดิมขึ้นลงนะคะแล้วก็คอมพิวเตอร์ก็น่าจะเพราะว่า AI นะคะ AI ที่มาคนต้องการคอมพิวเตอร์ก็น่าจะเป็นตัวผลิตภัณฑ์product ที่ดีขึ้นส่วน medical ก็ดีค่ะดีเติบโตอย่างรวดเร็วมากเลยค่ะมีคำถามไหมคะ
Okay, so if no other questions, maybe I can just conclude. I think the next few quarters, because of the need for China to start to recover economically, will still be a little bit weak, but I'm optimistic, especially if China starts to recover. Starting middle of next year, things should start to improve. And that, of course, depends on also the US consumer not, starting to go down because interest rates are still high. There's optimism that inflation is getting under control and the Federal Reserve may drop interest rates by the middle or second half of next year. And I think that will give an optimism to many companies that we have got through this high interest rate without a major recession, which frankly speaking, given how far the interest rates went up so quickly, is, quite an achievement by the Federal Reserve that they managed to get through this high inflation without causing a significant recession. So I think we should be grateful for that. And I still am, relatively optimistic for next year, especially because we believe we can start to generate a lot more revenue from our silicon carbide business because our new equipment is coming in.
ค่ะคุณริชาร์ดขอสรุปนะคะว่าเราคิดว่าไตรมาสอีก 2-3 ไตรมาสข้างหน้าเนี่ยน่าจะมีแนวโน้มที่ดีขึ้นนะคะโดยเฉพาะครึ่งปีหลังเพราะว่าเราต้องดูว่าตลาดตะวันตกยังไงเรามีความคิดว่าตอนนี้ทางจีนนะคะทางจีนเนี่ยจะฟื้นตัวแล้วก็ทางตลาดตะวันตกเนี่ยเนื่องจากดอกเบี้ยที่สูงเนี่ยที่ธนาคารกลางออกมาทำให้ดอกเบี้ยสูงเนี่ยมันจะเป็นการลดปัญหาของภาวะเงินเฟ้อนะคะโอเคมีคำถามเข้ามานะคะว่าprotecting circuit board and substrate act of 2023 ของอเมริกานะคะจะมีผลกระทบต่อการส่งออกไปอเมริกาของ HANA หรือไม่ This protecting act will it has any impact to our export to US market?
I'm not aware of this particular issue. I'll have to look into it. I doubt it. It probably may affect the PCB manufacturers rather than the PCB assembly manufacturers. But I need to look into this. I'm not aware of this particular issue, I'm afraid.
ค่ะอันนี้นะคะเรายังไม่มีข้อมูลที่ชัดเจนนะคะเราน่าจะต้องไปดูรายละเอียดของมันก่อนนะคะ
Please just cut us off. Okay, so I think unfortunately the time is up. So I thank everyone for your interest, and we'll see you in the next quarter. Thank you.